Most investors are still waiting for a recession, trusting the Fed and hoping TradFi will give them the green light. But what if the entire playbook is already dead? AI isn't just replacing jobs, it's rewiring the economy. A few sharp minds have stopped watching the headlines and started watching the patterns. Jordi Visser, he's one of them. One of the youngest managing directors in Morgan Stanley's history, former chief investment officer of a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, and now at 22V Research, he's connecting the dots between AI, Bitcoin, and the next evolution of the global economy. In his view, this moment is about to separate the assets that survive from everything else.
Bitcoin to me has earned the moat status. It is accepted. Yes. It is a story. It is the only place in crypto where people every level go, yeah, that if I was going to invest in any, I'd invest in that. I'd be there. Gold and religion are the only other ones. And when you get to that level, if you're the thing that won't be destroyed as AI accelerates and companies in the way the fiat system has been built on, which is ideas turn into money and that money gets redistributed in exchange around the globe, the digital economy will grow and AI will destroy all companies in its path. And the bigger you are, the more vulnerable you are. Bitcoin is the only big asset that's not vulnerable.
Bitcoin, he says, is the only asset that cannot be disrupted because it's already outside the system. And it's not just resilient, it's rising.
Bitcoin will be the second biggest asset in the world by the end of this year. So it will surpass silver. It's slightly behind it now. It will surpass the Mag 7. It will surpass Saudi Aramco. It'll be just behind gold.
But the most radical idea, recessions as we know them, may be over. We're entering a new kind of economy where GDP isn't built on factories and goods, but on data and code.
A recession is just not possible. GDP itself is a statistic created in the 1930s for tangible goods. We're not an economy built on tangible goods anymore.
Everything that you thought you knew about the market, about recessions, timing the Fed, and economic cycles, well, my friends, it's being rewritten. If you want to learn the fastest way to master AI, Jordi shares his number one tip. It is so empowering what you said, and I think that it's a really big opportunity for anyone watching this right now. They're watching this interview and they're either not happy at their job, they're not sure what they're gonna do for their professional career, or maybe they're just looking for a better way to make more money. Watch this, guys, or get left behind. Jordi, welcome to the channel. It's great to have you here. Very excited to have you here. How's it going?
It's going great, Kyle. Great to be here. Happy to start a journey together.
Yeah, same here. So, Jordi, for those watching who may not be familiar with you or your work, why don't you just give a little intro and tell the folks who Jordi Visser is?
Well, I spent basically 30 years in the traditional finance world for the most part, most or half of it with Morgan Stanley. Lived in Brazil for a little while during that time to open an office for the firm there. And then I moved back to the States. I left Morgan Stanley, started my own macro hedge fund, brought it into another hedge fund and managed macro or a version of quant during the time there. And so have a lot of background throughout the traditional finance world. And then about a year and a half ago, at this point, the hedge fund shut down and I had to make a decision to stay in traditional finance and continue to manage people and work for investors, or I got more interested in AI and my life has evolved and I'm spending my entire time now on artificial intelligence and crypto.
So you walked away from the hedge fund life and that kind of stuff to focus full time on AI and crypto. What was the kind of shift, for you that made you decide to do that?
Well, I didn't decide to do it until something happened that I think if a lot of people try this, they'll go through as well, which is the empowering feeling of not having to get up every single day and go to an office and check in and have meetings and manage people and talk to investors for 12 hours a day and then go home after putting in 60 hours a week. And then on the weekends, think about the markets and think about how we can run the business differently and do all these things. And once I didn't have to do that, I started to spend time learning. I took some Coursera courses. I made it a goal to learn how to at least code in Python and manipulate a computer in a way that I didn't go to school for, just because I thought it would empower me not only from a business perspective and give me some options, but also it would make me learn more and make me more excited. And it did exactly that. And then 2 months later, I launched a YouTube channel. I started doing a weekly Substack and a weekly YouTube, and really was using AI. So what triggered it was more the feeling that I could build a business around that. I didn't have to be going into the office. And what I gained, which I hear a lot of people in Bitcoin talk about, was I gained time back. I gained health back. I was able to work out when I wanted and everything else. So I just got a better control over my life, and it led to more happiness. That's fantastic. You said something that I'm curious about. And I think that's really inspiring story for anyone listening, because I think that, I know certainly for myself and just kind of my colleagues when I was in high school, for example, like, what do you do after high school? At least in America, and at least when I was growing up, the standard thing was to go to university or go to, whatever. And now, that's expensive decision. A lot of times most people say that they did, whatever they studied or majored in, they didn't end up using it. And there's such a need right now for people to integrate into different organizations or support for people who understand how to use these AI tools, AI agents. And you said that you took some Coursera classes and learned how to do Python coding. Were you at all a developer before learning Python? How much Python or coding is necessary to learn to become proficient to be able to use these AI tools? So it's a good question. One, no, I've never been a developer. When I first got to Morgan Stanley, I built some applications, but that was mainly in spreadsheet programming. So think of Excel before there was Excel on a Unix Spark station. So that didn't really count to me. But let's just say I've always been enamored with efficiency and productivity, whether it's cooking, whether it's skiing, whether it's driving, anything in life. I'm always trying to shave some time off things. So I learned enough to, let's say, be able to manipulate the computer in a way where I understood what I was doing. A very smart person in AI told me I didn't need to learn it, that by the time I took the classes, you'd be able to just natural language process your way through it, which has been the case. But I learned enough to be able to build things. And once I started to build things, I say this a lot to people. I was out to dinner with someone last night. I've built a relationship with the LLMs. They're literally my brainstorming friends that I've now come to depend on for answering questions. And I hated school, and I'm very open about that when I speak, that I just was bored by it. So LLMs give me the chance to learn the way I want to learn. And I'm sure as we go through this, you'll hear some things that I do that are not that normal with using them. Do you think that where we are currently, that's true, that we don't need to know how to do Python or any coding to be able to be proficient with the current tools that are offered? I know that things are being built, and things that seem to augment developers. But when I watch these YouTube videos about the guys, Matthew Berman and, all these other guys who are covering, the latest tools, they're still running things inside of these windows, and it shows you all the script that's being written from the AIs. But if you don't know what you're looking at, how can you modify that or make sure it's good, or even use that in, something? I just feel like, for me anyway, I'm still intimidated by these things if I wanted to try to do something, super custom for myself, right? And I people are using things like Make, for example, and a few others. Oh, yes. Okay. If you really wanted to customize your workflow, but it seems like the pace that we're going right now is so rapid. People, it's like, I'd like to know another language too, right? I'd love to learn Spanish or French or whatever. I live in Thailand sometimes. So but I always think that by the time I would actually learn that language, there's going to be an earpiece, that does it in real time. And my time is much better off spent doing something else. And I guess I'm just going down this rabbit hole a little bit, because it is so empowering what you said. And I think that it's a really big opportunity for anyone watching this right now. They're watching this interview, and they're either not happy at their job, they're not sure what they're going to do for their professional career, or maybe they're just looking for a better way to make more money. And I know that, if someone watching this came to me and said, Kyle, I can upgrade your entire company and everything, because
everyone on our team right now is too busy doing their thing. And yes, they're all using things like ChatGPT or, Google or Anthropic or whatever, but like no one's really no one has a full time to be like that chief AI officer. And I think that job position, a lot of people look for and pay a lot of money for.
So a couple things you said there, the Matthew Berman thing, I think the name of their podcast / YouTube is like AI's next wave or the next wave of AI. I listen to that every episode. So, and the reason I listen to it, and I never have watched them on the YouTube, I've listened to the podcast while I'm walking around in the park. The reason is to stay up to speed with everything that's changing.
Yes.
Your point about how much do you have to learn, I learned to ski when I was 43 years old. Now, to do that, I did it for my family. I wanted my kids to know how to ski. I wanted to learn how to do it. I had the money. But once you don't ski as a kid, it's a very intimidating thing to go do. You could get hurt. You have to commit a tremendous amount of time to actually get there. AI is no different to me. So I did that, and now I can ski on any hill on the mountain. I learned how to do it as slow as I could. I put a lot of time into the AI, and your point is absolutely true. If you want to use Replit or Cursor, which I highly recommend to everyone, if you can get to the point where you can use that, and it won't take more than, honestly, if you commit a weekend, a solid weekend, and you go, you know what, I'm going to commit 10 hours on Saturday, 10 hours on Sunday.
Wow.
I need to watch a YouTube video. I need to know how to get to the terminal, how to use a coding editor, how to bring this up, and then get into Replit or Cursor and just go build a website and make that your goal. I want to go build a website. You'll be able to do it within a weekend. And then once you do it once, just like driving a car, you just have to put in the reps, and it doesn't have to be a lot of reps. So you don't need to learn coding. You just need to learn, how do I bring up the terminal? How do I do this? And the great thing is, if you go into ChatGPT and just say, hey, I want to use Cursor and I want to be able to do it, you'll have it done in no time whatsoever.
That's what I was going to ask. The next thing is, okay, so if anyone watching, if they wanted to spend those 20 hours, you could go to YouTube right now and you could be misdirected in a million different ways and watch 20 hours of content. Where is there a resource or a link or something that you would recommend people check out?
Yeah. So Coursera is great for taking one Python class, just one Python class. It's all within inside there. And it'll say something like, it'll take you 3 weeks to finish. No, think of that as school. And maybe it's an hour a class twice a week. So theoretically it'd be 6 hours, but you can absolutely bang out a Coursera course in 3 hours. Usually they're free. There's free ones. You can pay for them. There's a bunch of different things, but that'll take you through, and it's all in the environment. You don't need to upload anything onto your computer. But if you take a Python course, by the time you're done, it will show you how to bring Python onto your computer, how to get to the terminal, how to put in a simple code. And then if you go to ChatGPT and just ask it to code something and then go put it in, again, I have an Aura Ring on. My first class, I wanted to go grab my Aura Ring data from the website. So after I got enough, I went to ChatGPT and said, hey, I want to grab my data and graph out my Aura Ring data onto a website. Please help me do that. It wrote the code. I put it into the script. I ran the script and it was on my screen in seconds later.
Phenomenal. So phenomenal. Yeah. We can go into a whole other conversation about Aura Ring. I'm so curious because I have my Apple Watch, I've got my Whoop, and I just watched, I don't know if you know this guy, his name's Seem Land, like this guy from, he's Scandinavian, and he's kind of like Brian Johnson in a way, but younger and very data driven. And I love watching his channel. And anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but he just did this review about all wearables and sleep assessment things. And anyway, he said that Whoop was quite low in the comparable to something like Aura Ring. But anyway, I digress. Curious, my audience is, I'm starting another channel about health and longevity, but that's not this channel. So
you can have me on that too. I spend a lot of time on all that stuff. That's
fantastic. I think we'll get along just well then. So you have over 30 years in markets right now. And I think, right now it's an incredible time of uncertainty, and you've been through the .com bubble, 2008, COVID, all these kind of things. Right now, where do you see us in the current market? Does it feel similar or parallel to anything that we've seen before? What's going on?
So the best way to frame it is the world probably has been fairly set in its structure since after World War II. And what the U.S. new administration is doing and what Donald Trump is doing is shaking that entire structure and trying to change it in a fairly quick way. That means security, that means trade, a whole bunch of things. And we don't know what that means. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So that's one thing. The second thing is, unfortunately for everyone who's dealing with this, the United States, which has become the biggest economy and the most important economy for all economies on the planet, we consume an enormous amount of stuff. And the problem is the administration has also said, we're not only going to restructure trade in this, we're doing it because we have a fiscal deficit that is at very scary levels where the interest on our expense is growing by $1 trillion a year. We're $2 trillion in a hole in the budget. So every year it adds $2 trillion to debt if we don't do something. And debt to GDP has gone from 30% during the Reagan years to 120% of GDP. The problem is that the US stock market has become enormous relative to all other stock markets in the world. And the stock market capitalization relative to GDP is 200%. So when we tried to do this type of Reaganomics and kind of restructure things a little bit in the early 1980s, it came at a time when debt to GDP was only 30% and market cap to GDP was only 40%. So the US economy is financialized. It's dependent on the wealthy because we have a massive distribution of wealth problem and consumption is at the higher end. So if stocks fall, it starts to freak out not just things here, but it's starting to spread a little bit. So we're in an uncertain time. We're trying to change things. We have let's say an immune system, which is very weak because of the deficit and the debt. And the stock market is overvalued and at a level that's worried. So everyone's just kind of in a period of uncertainty. And it's probably going to stay that way for at least another month or two until we see whether the policies are going to cause a recession.
What do you think? You think that's what's going to happen?
No. So I have, number one, a recession is a word that people use that has no true definition. So if you ask me, could we have 2 quarters of negative GDP? Of course we could. We had that in 2022. It doesn't matter. A recession to me is when you lose a lot of jobs and it's very hard for people then to go get a job. A lot of jobs in the United States historically has been about 1.5% of the working population, which right now would mean 2 million jobs. We're not going to lose 2 million jobs. The reason we're not going to lose 2 million jobs is because we have a labor shortage, like most countries around the globe, and we just really shut off immigration almost to zero. Forget the deportations and the things that are going on. We've stopped immigration, and that has already happened. So it's going to be very, very difficult and challenging to fill the labor hole. So I think the job situation is weaker than what people realize. I think things are frozen a little bit, but most of this is coming from AI. And since we haven't spoken before, and I'll give a little kind of framework as to the way people should think about the economy and why a recession is just not possible. GDP itself is a statistic created in the 1930s for tangible goods. We're not an economy built on tangible goods anymore. Not with Google, not with, where are you in Thailand? We're doing this over Zoom. Like, this is not the same world where newspapers would give you news in the 1930s. So there's 3 parts of the economy in the US. A third of it is the digital economy. A third of it is the old GDP debt-filled economy. And a third of it is the government. Well, the government is maybe going to have a little bit of a recession this year. The digital economy is going to continue to grow and not have a recession. And the old school GDP might have a recession, but that's where you don't have it. The government side is driven by healthcare, Social Security, the transfer payments that go on. And that's why it's very difficult, even if there's job losses, to offset the fact that we're going to be giving people money going forward because they're aging and we have a labor shortage. So there won't be a recession, which means you're going to get an opportunity to buy stuff this year because while there's uncertainty, while credit spreads are widening, people start panicking. We're starting to see that a little bit more. It's starting to spread around the globe a little bit. I can see it this morning. And I get the impression that you're going to get a chance to put money to work at very good levels because coming out of that, AI is going to be the dominant theme.
You think that in the crypto market, there's going to be even better levels to buy things at than right now? It feels like there's the apathy, at least for altcoins right now, is unbelievable. The most hyped gaming project just launched the other day, Gunzilla, which I think I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but everyone was expecting this thing to launch in the multi-billions. And at the time of recording, it's sitting at somewhere, I think like between a 40 and a $60 million circulating market cap, which is unbelievable. The apathy is just crazy. But, I mean, at least I don't have as much time in markets as you do, but I do know that usually when apathy is at all-time highs and people give up, it feels like that's when the market decides to rally or something. Do you think we're going to go much lower than we are currently right now, or do you think we're kind of maybe at bottom?
Let's put it this way: the most similar year this is, and this will not make your viewers and listeners happy, but the most similar year this is for the environment is 2022. 2022 was a Fed-induced slowdown. This one is a government-induced slowdown around trade and uncertainty. I don't think this is 2022, but I think the first half of the year is going to feel like that. I think the second half of the year is going to feel very differently because I think there's stimulus coming on the back end, and it's government-induced, which means Trump can immediately start to reverse things. I also don't think that the trade situation, because our economy is so digital now, is as bad for GDP as what people are kind of making it out to be. So I don't think we'll get a... Go ahead.
Sorry, what part of 2022? That's very important. Well,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. What part of 2022?
The uncertainty part. So unfortunately, we have not reached a point, and I've written about this, where I think it will happen this year, where crypto has a tremendous amount of tailwinds behind it, where it had headwinds back in 2022. Yeah. The tailwinds are structural, meaning I'm a network effects believer this year. I believe stablecoin are accelerating, and we're with Stripe and everything going on globally. There's more and more transactions that are going to happen on the network. So in the blockchain, using stablecoins, transactions around the globe, we are moving to every day having more and more wallets being created, more market cap in stablecoins. And that's good for the crypto environment because every dollar around the globe that goes into a country with the 7 billion people that don't trust their government, their bank, or their currency, that money goes into the ecosystem and it stays in the ecosystem for obvious reasons. And that benefits all coins. The problem is that is not what's driving the altcoin market. The altcoin market needs the gambling side of the United States to be active and prevalent, and that's not happening. Yeah. And that's where it's directly related back to the stock market. I think it goes unnoticed from people around the globe, but the United States new car sales are about $200 billion a year now. Gambling in the US is $200 billion a year. And it's growing exponentially, which means gambling is more important as a part of the government statistic to new cars sales. And that just means that altcoins are always going to be subject to what's happening with Palantir, what's happening with GameStop, what's happening. And at some point right now, the gambling's not working. And when the gambling's not working, people are waiting for some kind of tailwind. I think it'll happen in the second half of the year, but I think there's lower prices for a lot of stuff in the first half.
I was going to go into some more AI stuff, but I want to stick on this for a little bit longer. I had Matt Hogan from Bitwise on the other day, and we were talking about kind of where we are in the cycle. And then one of the things I asked him was, do you think that we're still in the traditional 4-year cycle? And he said no, and then went on to elaborate that he thought that maybe when Trump came in, the 4-year cycle kind of reset. It kind of that would kind of align with what you said, if we were more toward the tail end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023, just when, where things are either at the worst, at the kind of bottom, and then starting to kind of make its way up because there's so much tailwinds. Like, we were talking about it, and I just don't know. I don't know how the hell the price of Bitcoin isn't going up. Everyone buying it. It's like everyone, like GameStop and Mara, and everyone's coming and buying so much Bitcoin. Why is the price not going up? So that would kind of align. Are you still in the camp of like the traditional 4-year cycle, meaning that we probably see the end of this quote on bull run at the end of 25, or is a 4-year cycle done in crypto?
Yeah, so the good news is, as someone who believes the asset has made a leap in the last 2 years to a different place, I think of it now as being more related to what's happening in technology and AI. and it will benefit dramatically. And the cycle part of Bitcoin to me is over. The adoption stage is where we are. So I believe, and I've said this, and I still believe it even for this year, that Bitcoin will be the second biggest asset in the world by the end of this year. So it will surpass silver. It's slightly behind it now. It will surpass the Mag 7. It will surpass Saudi Aramco. And it'll be just behind gold. And the reason is what you asked, which is I think people have to realize that at some point, thinking of it as a new asset that was less than $1 trillion, it isn't a small asset anymore. When you say it's the second biggest asset in the world, that means it's reached a status that, like I wrote a piece yesterday where I basically said it's already reached the point where you guys have to accept it as an asset. Now, the problem is, and what I don't think people realize, traditional finance is more heavily involved in this than ever before, but they don't own it. They short it, and they short it as a reason. As someone, if I was trading a portfolio right now and I wanted to hedge my entire portfolio, I need liquid beta shorts. Well, you can short futures, you can get involved in Bitcoin, and I think people underestimate the impact that has, that macro hedge funds that believe that we're in 2022. They're not shorting Bitcoin because they believe it should go down. They're shorting it because it's just one of the shorts they have in their portfolio, but it's liquid. They can trade it all the time. And I think more and more that's becoming part of it. Is there is a big short base that gets correlated to stock. So this year, the first quarter, Bitcoin outperformed the Mag 7 by 7%. The Mag 7 underperformed Bitcoin the last 2 years by 24% and 32%. So that means in a bull market, Bitcoin outperformed the Magnificent 7. And so far this year, the Magnificent 7 have underperformed Bitcoin by 7%. That's the way that I measure it for this year. I've been looking at that chart and saying that this will be the year that it gets accepted as the true AI asset that is the largest asset in the world.
Is it the true AI asset?
Yes, I believe Bitcoin's ultimate strength is AI. That I've called it the purest AI trade. It's just that people have a hard time accepting it because they don't understand what I mean. And I literally wrote a Substack on this yesterday to introduce people. What I mean is this. So AI is a disruptive force that is it will destroy all moats of businesses. So if someone comes up with an idea and they create an idea and that idea becomes a company and that company starts to move ahead of other companies and they're gaining brand and they have a moat now and then they buy up all their competitors, that's the world that we were in. In a world of AI, there's infinite competition. We've had the democratization of intelligence, which means free intelligence. We've given it to everyone in the world, which means we're going to have a rise of entrepreneurship from people in Brazil, where I lived, in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Nigeria, and they are hungry and they want to compete, and they will compete. And you can build things and copy things very, very quickly with artificial intelligence already today. And like you said at the beginning, it's changing so rapidly that it gives people tools where you just speak into an app and it copies the app that you're using. And that means that company just lost revenue and you're not paying anyone for it because you built it yourself. That is what is happening. And what that means is you have to find something that has a moat. And I've said publicly, I'll say it again and again, there's only two moats that I know of aside from Bitcoin. So Bitcoin to me has earned the moat status. It is accepted. It is a story. It is the only place in crypto where people every level go, yeah, that if I was going to invest in any, I'd invest in that. I'd be there. Gold and religion are the only other ones. And when you get to that level, if you're the thing that won't be destroyed, as AI accelerates and companies and the way the fiat system has been built on, which is ideas turn into money and that money gets redistributed in exchange around the globe, the digital economy will grow and AI will destroy all companies in its path. And the bigger you are, the more vulnerable you are. Bitcoin is the only big asset that's not vulnerable.
The immaculate conception, as people call it, that I don't know if that could ever be. It will be reproduced probably in other ways, maybe sometime down the line. Maybe for some sort of other disruptive technology using decentralized consensus, but certainly not for digital gold or a store of a peer-to-peer currency or something.
Kyle, have you had Jeff Booth on?
Who?
Jeff Booth?
No.
So the reason I asked the question, so I heard Jeff Booth speak, and he's, I believe, out of Canada, and he's a Bitcoin lover and a technologist. He talks about this relationship between innovation, deflationary, and the government's need to offset it with inflationary money. The reason I wanted to make sure that this point got brought up is because we went back to kind of the Bitcoin white paper. Yes. What I don't think people understand, the reason this year is so important is because in 2008, when the Bitcoin white paper came out, we had just finished the year in 2007 where the US had $9 trillion of debt. It's also the year that the iPhone was launched. The iPhone comes out, we have exponential competition, software, commodities get hurt, like you destroy businesses around the globe. Amazon eats everything that's a retail stock, and the US dominates. We end up 17 years later, and now we're moving into AI. Now the Mag 7 are starting to feel the pain, but the US now has $36 trillion of debt. So we had to inflate to offset the deflationary power that was coming from both the iPhone and ultimately what's going on now with AI. And we're left in a situation where demographics are going to force us to print more money or have more liquidity going because the aging need more money for healthcare. And that's not, whatever our longevity views are, we're not helping people in their 70s that have diabetes tomorrow. That's going to take a long time. Unfortunately for them, longevity will increase, but for people that are getting the money, it's not going to change. So we're going to have so much money in the system, and everyone wants to invest in what's working. Everyone who's wealthy wants to invest in what's working. You haven't needed to invest in Bitcoin during this last 17 years. And the reason was because the iPhone and the Mag 7 allowed you to not have to. And that's why I care about Bitcoin versus the Mag 7, because there's no replacement for the Mag 7. The replacement is 1,000 companies, 2,000 companies, 20,000 companies competing, but the money's still sloshing around, and people are only going to be able to invest in the assets that are big enough. And so it's all coincided with that 2007 period where innovation went exponential and the money printing went exponential.
What year did you kind of get into the crypto space?
So my story is actually a good one. I believed in the blockchain very early on, didn't believe in any of the cryptocurrency side, couldn't come to terms with it.
2018, was it? The blockchain, not crypto kind of crowd?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
2020, my son had taken $700 and turned it into 80,000 over the course of 4 months. And I sat down with him and tried to convince him to move most of it into Bitcoin. He refused. He ended up losing it all, to fast forward to that part. But because of what he was able to tell me as a 13-year-old, meaning he described why this was the coin you want to be involved in, why this was important, and he knew it. And I asked him where he got it from, and he said, well, I got it from Twitter and I got it from Reddit, and that's where he got all his information. So I realized that there was something happening for the younger generation here that would last forever, because he was able to learn a lot in the way that he learned, which was just the same way a portfolio manager would. So I started listening to podcasts because I was like, if this is going to be real now, I have to learn more. And I ran into Michael Saylor, as I think a lot of people eventually do. And I listened to probably 3 or 4 podcasts on a ski trip with him. And I was blown away by the logic involved in it, why he did it, why it made sense to me, because he connected this disruption that I talked about. And I don't think people realize this when they listen to Michael Saylor. When he made the original decision with MicroStrategy to buy Bitcoin, the thing he said was, okay, the government just destroyed me. They raised money, so they're taking the $1 billion of cash that I have. So I have to make a choice now. They're putting a gun to my head. If I keep it in T-bills, I'm getting inflated away. I'm going to lose it. If I don't invest it, I'm going to lose to Microsoft because I can't beat them. So what do? Do I try to start 10 companies with $100 million of funding and hope that one of them, like a VC fund, turns into something? He decided to buy Bitcoin. He said, well, at least let me deal with the inflation that I don't lose the money. That intelligence in that decision, the part that I cared more about was the Microsoft beating his business, because that's the AI thing. That's what connected the dot for me on, oh, the disruption of business is what drove him to it. So when he says, you don't find Bitcoin, Bitcoin finds you, meaning you don't reach for it until you need it. Well, wealthy people don't need it, which is why they don't care for it, because it would be embarrassing if they bought it at the highs. So they don't want to get involved in it. Gold is easy. That's not. So I think the Michael Saylor thing and that whole thing got me heavily into it. And then as time went on and I started doing more research as a macro person, it really connected back to the technology disruption side. And that's why I mentioned Jeff Booth and other people along the journey that led me to set up strategic Bitcoin reserves for my kids who will never have hope in their jobs and stuff like that. So
I'm just curious on your thoughts, because it's very Bitcoin centric and it makes sense. Bitcoin is the thing that no one can argue with. I think that it's like made it and like it's going to be adopted. And like you said, it has the biggest moat. But potentially there's so much more possibility out there. We just haven't really seen it because of, I think, the tech innovation and evolution, and it needs to be, more easily used by people, less burdened by the interaction with the blockchain itself, and more of that complicated stuff is abstracted away. What are your thoughts on altcoins and like decentralized types of projects?
So when I understood the inflation part, when I understood the money printing part, when I understood the technology disruption part, I started realizing that go back to the blockchain and what originally got me interested. Okay, so eventually, let's take two examples. The Uber one. How do we reduce the prices and get rid of the middlemen? Okay, let's take Justin Bieber. How do we have Justin Bieber be found and own most of his music and not have to have a publisher and not own only 30%? So those two stories were the ones that I used. And Perfect. The Uber thing is a community thing. If it was easy for there to be a competition where the drivers could set up their own business overnight and leave Uber and then charge less money, then immediately it would be successful. What has to happen for that is, and this is why the stablecoin thing is so important to me, we need the actual transaction of money to be inside that world. And that means the users need to have an easy situation of opening a wallet, and this has to be the masses. And that's why the stablecoin thing is so important. It needs to be on your phone. It needs to be AI agents. There needs to be tremendous volume, because at the end of the day, it's not just the middleman inefficiency. It's the money transaction inefficiency. If you're the driver, you're not getting your money for weeks. The company's getting the money immediately. Yeah. And then they're not paying them until, why can't it just immediately be distributed on a smart contract to where the company gets theirs, they get theirs, and MasterCard and Visa are taken out of the loop? So all of these middlemen just keep going. So it's the reason why I've been a believer that until we had, number one, stablecoin being a given, and now that the administration is in, and Custodia Bank did their, Vantage stablecoin, you've got more and more growth in the stablecoin market cap. You've got more and more transactions in Stripe's annual letter, which came out, which I highly recommend everyone in the crypto space. It's actually what I pinned on X for me because I thought it was that important, was their annual letter, which just talked about how much volume is going through them, but more importantly, how AI agents are speeding up the process. And that's the thing that I don't think people have connected, is that AI agents will allow transactions to be going much, much faster. And this will be happening every single day more and more as this year plays out, and in particular next year. That just means more volume. It means getting it easier to open up wallets when the administration gets a stablecoin act. That's why this year, once the equity markets bottom, my belief is that crypto will come back much faster than the equity markets will, because of the fact that the technology will have the AI overhang on it, while crypto will be benefiting from AI. And that's a very big difference, is the volumes will increase in exactly what you're talking about. And that's why I get so excited about, don't worry about the 4-year cycle. This is actually where the business of the ecosystem of crypto starts working, because of AI agents and because the competition for investments goes down.
I agree. Let's go back to the AI for a little bit. So Bill Gates recently said that he thinks AI will replace doctors and teachers and everything in the next decade. And he also said that humans won't be needed for most jobs. I think this is the general consensus, what most people are thinking right now. Do you agree with that? And then which kind of institutions and roles do you think that are at danger first? And then for people who are watching, and they're maybe worried about it, what should they do?
Yeah, this is one. I was out to dinner with someone who works in AI for Accenture, and we've known each other a long time. And he deals with the healthcare side, and he's a very smart guy, obviously. But his big concern was, well, what happens to our kids? Like, what's the identity of people and the work and what went on? And by the end of the conversation, when I talked to him about my story in Brazil and how, it's not the job thing here, it's that it's a status symbol. And in other countries, they don't have access to teachers. They don't have a job. So the biggest problem in the world is distributional wealth problem. So that I'm going to end there and kind of give you a teaser as to how we get there. AI jobs will remain for longer than people think. There will be some jobs created, as there are all with all innovations, that allow people to move into. There'll be displacement. But the reality is, we're going to not have to work as much. And maybe it takes 30 years before there's very little work. I don't want to work. I'm enjoying my life working 30 hours a week, 20 hours a week, maybe 10 hours. I want to be in Utah for the winter. I want to be in Maine for the summer. Like, that's the way I want to live my life, because I love nature and I love things. So I think people and humans are going to have to get to the point that every single job, there's not one job that you could name that a humanoid, since they're just human beings with a metal, skeleton, that think like humans, those will be around and everywhere in 15 years for sure. In 5 years, maybe there's, I don't know, a 500,000, maybe there's 1 million, maybe there's 5 million, but they're going to be mainly replacing physical jobs. And the reason is by 2030, if you go through global, shortages, and investor Chris Camillo had this quote where 9 trillion boxes exchange hands a year. Like, that's human beings that for the most part are lifting those, breaking their backs. We need humanoids to replace that because China's reached a demographic cliff. Japan's already there. Europe's there. We don't have people in the countries to replace them. And we have people in other countries that don't work at all that are now getting access to be entrepreneurs. So I think the job question will remain, and I think it's going to scare people. The best thing I can say to parents is teach your kids to be entrepreneurs and really look at what that means. Like, don't think an assembly line job. Don't send them with a major.
Sure.
Make sure they can do every single thing and be creative and be an entrepreneur.
I mean, I think that's why the beginning of the conversation was so interesting, because literally, I think that we're into a world right now where we're going to see, 8, 10, 12-year-olds creating insane software that, gets adopted. And maybe the next app that gets 100 million downloads in 2 weeks is built by a 12-year-old. I don't know, it's super possible. So I watched something a while back. I was just trying to find it right now on Google to see if I was right. But it was something along the lines of the fourth industrial revolution and how we come into a world of essentially of abundance. And it was what you were saying. It's like, we just won't have to work as much anymore. And this, from what I can remember, this was a couple of years ago, I watched this talk on it. And it was something about the evolution of nanobots or robotics, self-replicating machines, being able to do labor and do work at a negative cost, essentially where all the kind of manual tasks and things, it seems very, in a way, utopian. And then one interesting concept that came out of that talk too was that humans would go through a psychological and mental crisis because we identify so closely to what we do as a career that humans would need to find, how else do you identify? Do you think that we're headed toward a world like that?
If I put a percentage on it, it's the highest likelihood to me. But let's put it at in the next 30 years as something that I think is a version of what you're describing, is at least a 50% chance. And the reason is, and you hit on the key thing, we're not only seeing AI be brought out in the software level, now we're showing it integrating with hardware, but people forget that we're also making insane progress at the nano level. We're able to, what DeepThink has done in the healthcare side, the material side, and what's going to happen on the energy side with fusion, we are going to make breakthroughs on things that we couldn't figure out because, when people hear the term AGI, they usually get scared. But really the best way to say it is we're going to have an infinite amount of Albert Einsteins on the planet in 5 years. Albert Einstein came out and is known as one of, if not the smartest people in history, because in a single year, he came up with amazing papers that still blow people's mind that he figured it out back then. Well, we have people, 10 times smarter than Albert Einstein in 5 years with AGI that will be able to do this regularly. So you will come up with the ability of new materials and new materials that have not been created by the earth yet, where we just have to put it into something to build it. Like, you'll be able to make whatever you want. And so I believe it's going to happen. My last name is Visser. That means fisherman. My grandfather was from Friesland, so it's a little island in Holland. And so my name is just like Smith or just like anyone else. I've got my identity as a fisherman. That's why I brought up, Kyle, the entrepreneurship thing. I really am a believer that if you can teach yourself, and for me, I taught myself to ski at 43. I love to cook. I taught myself Python. I will teach myself anything that will bring me joy. And if I believe I'm going to live to 150, which is the utopian thing, which is why, if you believe what's happening, then yes, I do. Well, I want to prepare for living a healthy, happy life for another 100 years. And the only way to do that is to prepare my brain that at any age I can go learn a new skill, because the rigid nature of people as they get older, once you stop learning, once you stop trying, once you stop building muscle, I really do believe that you've created an environment for your body that you don't want to live. And being optimistic about the future, building muscle, eating healthy food, enjoying laughter, all of those things combined with learning new things, I think it allows you to not worry about that stuff. And that's where I am.
Yeah. And like you said, the advent and advance of medicine is just exploding. I mean, again, another channel, but, I've actually, I was an entrepreneur my whole life. I've, was someone who, had the grind mentality, where it was really, really proud to come on a call and be like, yeah, I got 2 hours of sleep last night, like bragging about it, And then I had my telomeres tested, and, those of you guys watching, they're like, it's a good way for scientists to look at a random blood set under a microscope and assess based on not even knowing who the person is, essentially how old they are. And for me, when I was 39 years old, this last year, I came back with the biological age of a 51-year-old. And wow, that was a crazy wake up call. I had to completely reshift the way I was living. And, it turns out that getting good sleep actually helps your cognition, and you can do much better at your work, and you're more fresh. And it's amazing when you actually prioritize your health and stuff like that. But for me to able to do some kind of more advanced therapies and things like that, I was able to actually increase my telomere length in 6 months. I've now went from 51-year-old biologically to 46. And so, making progress the right direction, which is really exciting. So, okay. So I have to ask you this too, because you're really involved in AI, and I think no one's really talking about it. And I guess it concerns me. And maybe maybe people don't talk about it because there's nothing that you can do about it. But last I heard, P-doom, or the probability of doom, or the likelihood that us as a human species gets wiped out from super intelligent, super intelligence. The number was anywhere between 18 to 26% from what I had heard. I don't know if there's any updates on that. That was about a year ago. I got these numbers from a pretty reliable source. What are your thoughts on this topic? It's a scary one to think about, but I think it is interesting to hear people's opinions.
Again, you said it at the beginning, and unfortunately, I read a book, The Daily Stoic, every day, because I think it's amazing to read kind of the works of Marcus Aurelius from 2,000 years ago and realize that the same worries that people have today, they had back then. So I'll just put it in the category of 18 to 26%. If I asked you, do you really think that's something that you could get an accurate measurement on? Even with telomeres, it's not a guarantee. It's just one of the things that they've come up with to look at. I don't get, let me rephrase, since we're just getting to know each other. My father taught me many things as a child, but one of the things he taught me very early on was everything that you hear in life is an opinion except 2 + 2. No matter what you hear in school, no matter what it is, whatever is in a book, it's just someone's opinion. And if you go through life actually believing any person's opinion, you're not going to be a happy person. So go learn everything you can. You constantly reassess your probabilities based on a Bayesian philosophy that you have in your head. Continue to absorb new data. And I think in this country in particular, as someone who doesn't have a political affiliation and thinks politics is somewhat ridiculous, and luckily I live in a country where it changes every 4 years anyway. And if you do a really hard job, usually you're replaced by the other party, and that's been going on around the world. It's amazing how really intelligent people only listen to one news source, and then they regurgitate the news back to you from that one news source. And that's on both sides. And there's no middle ground. And I don't live my life that way. I read everything I can. I question my own thoughts. We haven't talked about this yet, but if people wanted the number one thing that they could do to, as I said, develop a relationship with AI, which is really critical, go on a walk for 2 hours and pick a book that you want to read, but don't read it. Go on that walk, put on ChatGPT voice mode, and start the conversation with, I want you to take me through this book. First, give me a 2-minute summary of it, and it will verbally take you through it. Then you ask questions. Say, okay, show me all the chapters and give me the highlights of all the chapters. And then you pick the chapter that you want to spend time on. By the time you're done with 2 hours of walking around in the park, you will have learned that book much better than reading it, because you will have retained it better. You will have heard the things that you want to be involved with in terms of learning. That will make you happier and forget all these percentages, because I'm sure you could go into ChatGPT right now and do the exact same thing with that statistic. Where did it come from? What do you think about this? What's like just having a conversation with ChatGPT? It's the smartest person you have met yet in your lifetime, and it knows everything ever published on YouTube, on the internet, in podcasts, every form. So why not go talk to that person rather than read something you read on the internet?
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I mean, to use it in that way, and that's such a efficient way to go back to one of these books and like extract out of it what I need to and apply it to like my current life and situation.
Yeah, and so for me, I create now I'm doing more than this. Let's say I write 3 times a week of something that I publish. Substack, I do 1 a week. I mean, the one I did yesterday, I've had more people reach out than almost any Substack I've done. I just published it yesterday. And it literally just came to me as I was walking around. I had just done the Anthony Pompliano weekly thing that we do. And then someone reached out to me and I was like, it's a good point. I did mention Bitcoin as a moat. Let me write a Bitcoin moat piece. I haven't done that yet. And so I got my thoughts out. When I'm writing, I'll have a conversation with ChatGPT and I'll work on it to get it. Like, think about the times where you prepare for an interview, you write down a bunch of questions. Why not have ChatGPT look at a YouTube of me that I've done in an interview, pick out the points, and then you have a conversation. It's just a better way to prepare for things and to learn for things, and it just connects more dots. And when you read a book, everyone daydreams a little. Everyone gets lost on a page, or there's a subject that they feel is not worth the time because they already know it, but they don't want to skip ahead in case something is there. You don't need to have all of that. If you do it in a conversation, you're going to learn a lot more. And so that 2 hours, I guarantee you, will lead to you doing it with so many books going forward.
Yeah, I'm literally looking forward to doing that. I think that's a really interesting way to interact with AI. Any other really cool, useful tips that people can apply to?
Yeah. So one other way, first of all, everyone should sign up for the Neuron email. It's a daily email that comes out. That is a must read every day. Neuron. So if you just type in the Neuron and you sign up for the email, and it gets distributed about 6 o'clock in the morning every day. It has the highlights from each day of like the new things in AI. And it's a quick read. You just go through it and, it comes out every single day, including Saturday and Sunday. It's a great way to keep up on how fast it's changing. To go back to a second, and since it sounds like you're an entrepreneur, you've probably read that one of the big trends out in Silicon Valley is to like take walks with people and brainstorm during walks. The beauty of the AirPods with ChatGPT is that when you're in a park, you're having a conversation. Like, this is normal now. So when I'm walking around the park, everyone's on the phone. You think they're talking to their mother or their husband or wife, when the reality is I'm just talking to an LLM bot and I'm having a conversation about a book. And I'm walking, and I tend to do better when I'm outside in nature learning. I've just realized that I connect dots much better when I'm looking at trees and I'm looking at birds and I'm kind of smelling the fresh air. When you're sitting in your bed and you're reading a book, you're not getting the exercise in, so you're not getting the strength, but you're also not in nature. And I don't think it's as conducive to retaining it or connecting it to other dots. That is a different skill set that I try to put myself in, which I think all creative people, some people use drugs. I use nature and I walk around and I just try to like gain some dot connection or something that goes, oh, that would be an interesting paper. And then what I do is I pause what I'm doing with ChatGPT. I go to notes, I put that down. It's now there. It's an idea I have, and I go on. That's the only way I can keep up with the papers. You have to have good ideas that people are going to like, and it's just much easier using AI. So those would be the two tools: walk in nature, listening, and talking to the bot. I guarantee that it'll change your life. If you have kids, have it at the dinner table. Pull it out and just bring ChatGPT to the dinner table and talk about whatever topic you want for a day. It doesn't matter what it is: history, science, anything. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Back to kind of investments, as a lot of the viewers of the channel are interested in, improving their financial situation. What percentage of your portfolio is currently in crypto?
It's now over 50% because of the appreciation the last couple of years. So I'm all in.
Yeah, and the other 50% would be in cash or real estate or something. I'm just curious if it's
great question.
others. Yeah.
Yeah. Real estate, I do have a home in Maine. So I'll count that towards it. And then the almost the rest of it is all in money markets. So I don't even have any gold. So I'm 100% believer in the digital economy. And if you would have asked me 3 years ago, it would have been a lot more stocks, a lot less Bitcoin. I did have gold. I got rid of my gold and replaced it with Bitcoin. I probably should have some gold, but I've got money market funds, so I'm just sitting with that and Bitcoin.
So yeah, I agree that AI and crypto are the real areas that and longevity for me, but I don't see that being as investable in having like as short-term maybe ROI. I am looking at some investments in the longevity space, but again, another time, another day.
Yep.
For those watching, how does one get access to be able to invest in AI essentially? I know that before January 20th, essentially, before we had this correction in the market, you had the kind of AI agent crypto token space. And that was, I think people just launched it because they were going on the trend of AI, coattailing that, didn't really have strong use cases for a lot of the tokens in a lot of these situations. Mm-hmm. Is there maybe a more viable or sound way that someone who's watching who's not an accredited investor maybe can get exposure to the AI industry?
So here's the interesting thing about this, Kyle. And so I think we're at the disruption phase of AI. The last 2 years was the speculative phase where people wanted to go buy it. Think of it as the internet bubble back in 99, 2000. Mm-hmm. What that means to me is those companies like Palantir, which is benefiting from AI, absolutely. But it's also trading at 50, 60 times sales. They've built in a lot of the future. If you believe that 3 years from now, the disruption from AI will be greater than today because it's moving at a pace that is just unprecedented, you have no certainty in the future. So when you have a high multiple name or something based on hope, it's going to come down at some point the second that there's a DeepSeek. So the DeepSeek moment, and I wrote a Substack on this, should be viewed not as DeepSeek will take over NVIDIA or this and that, but there's always going to be another DeepSeek. There's always going to be something that pops up. Before we got on this morning, I was using Manus, which is a new AI agent tool.
How did you get access code to it? Hook it up.
It took me one night. I just put in my email yesterday and I got it this morning. No joke.
No way. Maybe I requested it too a while back. Maybe I haven't checked. Okay, so how was it?
Definitely do it. It was great. I mean, it did exactly what I asked it to do, and I asked it to do some stock research for me because I do research now for a company, 22V, and one of the things that I believe, to answer your question, I hate to tell this to people, but if AI is at a disruptive place, it's about what it's not going to disrupt that becomes the investment going forward. And what it's not going to disrupt at this point is oil and energy. It's not going to disrupt copper companies. It's not going to disrupt healthcare companies. And what I mean by healthcare companies, I don't mean the biotech stuff and the longevity stuff. Those are moonshot things. You kind of have to be lucky sometimes. But I do believe that there'll be a speculative fury in that at some point. What I mean is companies like Cardinal Health and McKesson and Cigna and these companies that trade at a 15 PE. My YouTube channel, I just showed McKesson's gone up every year. Nobody even knows what the company is. They have $300 billion of revenues a year.
What?
The reason that they are, but they process pharmaceutical claims and all of this stuff. It's boring stuff, but here's what AI is going to do. It's going to make these companies more efficient. So you're extracting profit margins out of companies that don't have profit margins. The Mag 7 profit margins have dominated the globe, but their profit margins to me have peaked because their spending has gone up so dramatically. And I don't think they're going to get the return on investment because of the competition. So it's not that these are bad companies. Google's a great company. NVIDIA's a great company. They're going to be fine. But I don't think they're going to produce the types of returns that they did in the past. And they have to go through a period of digestion of this overdone thing. And so if tech isn't a sexy place, then guess what is a sexy place again? It's crypto. You want the dollars to not have competition. And I think this is something in the crypto world they haven't figured out yet, which is there's a certain amount of money that gets gambled. There's a certain amount of chips in the casino. if the tech names are not working and McKesson is working, you've never heard of McKesson. And if you go look at it, the stock is up every year. Its dividends have grown every year for the last 17 years. These are boring companies. ExxonMobil's a boring company. Chevron's a boring company. Cardinal Health's a boring company. But you know what? They're benefiting from AI because on the energy side, power is going to be a story, and you need power to power the innovation. On the second side, the government is going to cut back on spending, but they are still going to be sending those Medicare and Medicaid checks out. And that means these guys are going to continue to get their revenues. They are immune from the recession or the potential of recession, and they will benefit from the efficiency side. So AI agents will bring network effects to stable coins. It will absolutely bring tailwinds there. The administration in the US has tailwinds behind it as well. So the regulatory side is getting better. And that's why this isn't 2022. 2022, the regulatory walls went up dramatically after FTX. We are way past that point. And so everyone connecting it back, you have to hit technology stocks. And then the rally that comes, you want to be the new leaders. And crypto will be the new leaders of the next rally.
I completely agree with you. Jordi, if people want to find you and follow you, what you're doing, how do they do that?
So I'm on X, I'm on YouTube, and I'm on Substack daily for
links.
X. Yeah, and if you just Jordi Visser is a unique enough name that you'll pretty much find me. J Visser Labs is a company that I set up to do consulting work on the AI side. I do that for some clients to help them adopt it and give them advice on it. And then I work for a company, 22V Research, where they can get more deep dive stuff. I do deep dive reports on the AI transition and which companies around the globe you should be looking at, trading at low multiples as part of this efficiency and productivity gain. So I'm out there. They can find me.
Thanks, Jordi. Okay. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. We'll do this again, hopefully.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.